Welcome into Locked On Sports Atlanta. It's our first edition of Locked On Sports Atlanta Hangout, where all of the shows on this network get together. I'm Mark Zinno of A to Z, joined by John Chuckery of Hittin' Hard, and of course, from ATL Day One's Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste here on this Friday for our first edition of ATL Hangout here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Everybody, welcome, and our first edition. It's great to be with everybody finally.
Yeah, how's it going?
Listen, we can mix it all up today. We can argue with anybody we want today.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make sure I make fun of Zeno at some point today. I got to.
It's standard par for the course. Before we get to all the action of the day, reminder this segment brought to you by our friends at betonline.net. We got a lot to get to from the Hawks, the Falcons, and the Atlanta Braves as they are winding down towards the All-Star break to get a 5-4 win last night. Michael Harris was the player of the game, the hero, if you will. A big throw from the outfield, a big home run, and the Braves win 5-4. So they got 3 more games left before they hit the Midsummer Classic. We'll get to that coming up here in a little more than 10 minutes. Let's start with the other big news of the day in the NBA, folks, as yesterday, Deandre Ayton was offered the largest contract, or largest offer sheet, rather, in NBA history at 4 years, $133 million from the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Phoenix Suns had, at the time yesterday, 48 hours to match that offer, and, they have done so. The Phoenix Suns have matched the $133 million offer sheet. I honestly didn't think they were going to. And really, the fallout from all this, I think we only need to look at it as it pertains to the Atlanta Hawks and the viability of, one, Kevin Durant, if they could still be in those sweepstakes, and two, the movability or tradability of John Collins. So I'll kick it over to you, John, and let's start. Where are we with this, in your opinion?
Well, I never thought Ayton was going to leave Phoenix just because they're ready to win an NBA title. And if you were going to move Ayton here, it's assets, $40+ million a year. You're paying more than twice as much for the same position that you've already got with Clint Capella, and you don't get that big of a jump from one guy to the next. At this point, Collins is going to be here unless something is, unless there's just some name that we don't know of, like DeJounte Murray that came out of nowhere on draft night. But other than that, Ayton never made a whole lot of sense to me here. So as far as Durant goes, I've said, this helps the Hawks. If they want to try to put together a package, you're talking about a guy who Phoenix was on his list. Well, Phoenix ain't taking him now because they ain't giving up Booker to move him, and they're not giving up Ayton either. So right now, Collins is here. Probably not Durant, and this is the squad we got moving forward.
Well, I'll add one thing real quick. And again, now Ayton can't be moved until after January 15th by rules of the CBA. But if John Collins is going to be moved, right, if teams are looking at this now going, well, they're stuck, what is our option B? Collins looks like the option B, Tanitra. And if that's the case, they have to move him within the next 48 hours, 72 hours max. Otherwise, that market seems like it's dried up.
Well, that market, I believe, has already dried up. I spoke with an insider yesterday with one of the teams that had expressed interest in possibly being a partner with the Hawks. And that insider said that no team is really looking to give the Hawks, no team in the NBA is really looking to give the Hawks what their asking price is for John Collins. So if you don't have a partner in this league, we all know that all bets are off. So yeah, I believe that we're at a point in place where John Collins is essentially going to be your starting four. And I believe you have enough of a quote unquote supporting cast, whether you look at an Onyeka Okongwu, or even if you look at a Mo Harkless or Justin Holiday, where those guys are interchangeable at small forward and power forward, I think you probably got the squad that you're going to have, unless maybe you get close to the trade deadline and teams are desperate because they feel like, hey, we might have a possible playoff bound team, especially now that we know what the play-in tournament is going to be. If they feel like they're going to be a playoff team, then maybe they'll go to, back to the drawing board, or maybe go back to negotiations and discussions. And I feel the same way about Kevin Durant, quite honestly, Mark. I think at the beginning of free agency, he was the domino, right? Everyone was waiting for that domino to fall. But the domino's it hasn't fallen. And now that Ayton is back with the Suns, domino is probably not going to fall. If it does, it's probably going to be the same, from my understanding, probably midway through the season for a move for him.
JD?
And you know what, Tito? It's the one thing that to add to that, like, let's not act like John Collins is not a bad consolation prize, right? Because you have a guy in DeJounte Murray now with the team, and then you have Trae Young and Nate McMillan is going to have to figure out a way how to get those guys going and get this offense flowing, and how those guys are going to work. And then you got John Collins as not necessarily the second option, but a solid third option. And I'm not saying this is a big three. I'm not saying that, but John Collins in that third option role, I think that with another person that can get him, that can distribute the basketball and run that pick and roll with him, I think it's okay for the Hawks to be satisfied with where they are with John Collins and not necessarily have to be desperate for a deal and feel like they have to move him.
All right, I want to pose a question to you guys. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, so how close now, if this is the group we have, how close is this group to Miami, Milwaukee, Boston? Have they gotten closer? Are they more now in the Chicago and all that kind of?
You kind of took the question I was going to pose right out of my mouth here, because there is a certain way.
That's a great question, Chuck.
It's a great question. There is a certain way to look at this and understand it. But real quick, I want to get a word in from our friends at BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including everything about Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcast news this season. BetOnline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports events, including MMA, boxing, and golf, and find out that Tiger Woods has missed the cut again. We'll head over to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Sorry for the subtle jab at Tiger, but I kind of knew he wasn't making the cut here at St. Andrews this weekend. But John, your question is fair, because one of the things I kept saying is, look, if Kevin Durant ends up in Miami, if Kevin Durant ends up, in Philadelphia, for the Hawks, it's like, welcome to the 5 seed. That's the best you're going to get. And you may as well not worry about making another single deal, because you're not getting out of the East. Period. And if your goal is to win a title, as long as Kevin Durant is in the East, your chances are greatly minimized. Like, think about it. If he ends up in Miami, it's Milwaukee, it's Boston. Philadelphia still is pretty formidable. And then you're the next best team, maybe. So if your path to the finals is the 5 seed, then through the 1 seed, then through the 2 or 3 seed, good luck. I mean, with the defense they have, they don't have a shot.
Well, I still think Brooklyn, look, if he stays in Brooklyn, which I think is most likely to happen, they still have their big three, right? This was supposed to be the team that, and look, had they have been healthy a couple of years ago, they probably beat Milwaukee, in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you still have to factor them into it. I think the Hawks are still in that group, Toronto, Chicago. I think they're in that competitive group. I don't think they're back in the Charlotte and, Indiana or whatever.
Or
right. Where you're hoping for a play-in. Let's face it. Try to at least avoid the play-in, and at least you're in a series. At least you're in a series. You got a shot, right? They showed that a couple of years ago. If you get in a series, anything can happen. Having multiple play-in games is no pathway to get anywhere in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah. And I think that this front office is banking on DeAndre Hunter's development, right? Because we all kind of got a glimpse into what that looks like, being that two-way guy, because they've banked on him being a two-way guy for a couple of years now, but due to missing games and injuries and the like, that's something that hasn't come to fruition. So I think that Travis Schlenk is banking on a guy that a lot of people think he may have reached on a little bit, but I think that if DeAndre Hunter can stay healthy and give you 70 to 75 games, I know that's asking a lot from him, but I think that they may be able to push into that top 4 seed.
I was going to say I agree.
75 games though, they have to be productive for DeAndre. They can't just be games that he played last year. He's got to produce.
Oh yeah,
I think in addition to him producing, I think you're going to have to see a step up of everybody. I don't think anyone really played to their potential last year, if we're being honest, on that roster. And so really we're going to have to see everybody take their game up a notch. I think that's why Nate McMillan was in Oklahoma working with Trey on the whole off-ball thing that everybody's talking about, right? So when you think about the pieces at least improving, at a minimum, that's what everybody's going to have to do. Like, they're going to have to evolve their game just to get into that 4. But the other piece is this. I think if I compare it to last year, where the Hawks stood pat, right? And everybody that's at the top of the East kept improving, kept evolving, kept adding pieces. I think at least this year, with the addition of DeJounte Murray and kind of moving some pieces around, and like you said, Jarvis, hopefully we'll get the final emergence of DeAndre Hunter that we've been looking for, and also maybe see players like Onyeka Okongwu add some layers to his game. Then I think they're going to be in a competitive space, because I don't think the gap is as far as it was last year. Now, granted, there were some things like Chris Middleton going down with injury that made the Bucks be what the Bucks were. But I think when you look at the gap between where the Hawks were last year and where the top of the East was last year versus that gap this year, I do think the gap has closed a bit.
I want to ask you guys one more question here, and some of this is rumor bound, but the idea that Trey and John Collins aren't necessarily best of buds and don't get along, and even in a bigger picture, the idea that Trey might not be able to get along with a lot of players. I mean, the idea of Trey sort of not wanting to play defense and not putting in the effort on defense speaks to the idea that he walks around with this sense of, this is my team, this is my town, and I own this, and you guys are going to do what I say. And even though you guys are playing defense, I don't have to play defense kind of mantra. How much do you guys buy into those rumors that Trey and John don't necessarily get along?
Well, Mark, you're a Yankee fan. I don't know if you're old enough to remember two guys named Reggie Jackson and Thurman Munson that, pretty much didn't like.
A little bit different, but they were on first place the entire year.
Well, again, though, but 2 years ago, this team was in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they figured out. And that story's gone around for a few years. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they're best buds off the court. They also, by the way, had the fifth best combination of assist and points ratio between Collins and Trey Young last year. So can they coexist on the court? Yeah. I mean, can they coexist in the locker room? They have enough over the last couple of years that, again, we haven't gotten John Collins coming out and saying, I want to be out of here. I want to be traded. I want to be off this team. I don't like this. Well, again, when his representatives are doing the speaking, of course, hell, you hear that everywhere. I mean, right. Every guy's representative says nonsense out there. But until he himself comes out and tells me that I don't want to be here, and guys do that. And in the NBA, we just saw Kevin Durant go to ownership and say, yeah, I want out of here. Yeah, I know Kyrie opted in. I want out of here. Guys do that all the time in the NBA. Right. He hasn't done that.
Yeah, I don't feel like I feel the same way, John. I don't need them to be besties. All I need them to do is be productive. And as far as the league, it's interesting, Mark, because I don't know whether I would say, the league players like Trey or don't like Trey. I think more of what I saw at All-Star Weekend was respect. And if you have that respect and that drive and that dog in you in some way, shape, or form, then that's going to be something that's appealing to the players. And I think, Mark, there's that bigger situation that I kind of look at, which is low key between what Travis Schlenk has been able to do over the last several years, including getting a Trey Young. I think that Atlanta has finally become that destination. And when you add a piece like DeJounte Murray, to me, that's the bigger thing. Like, you keep John Collins, as long as they keep producing at the level they've been producing, meaning Trey to John, that's fine. But I think there are other pieces in the puzzle that, maybe if you're not Trey's BFF, then, you can still come here and be productive. And let's be real, Mark. Everybody talked about the fact that Kevin Huerter and Trey Young have been boys since their AAU days. Where's right. Kevin Huerter? Gone. So I think that maybe there's something to that for the NBA, but on the same token, I think sometimes we kind of overplay that hand of you got to be besties in order to coexist and be effective on a team.
And add to that, T, like if John Collins is who he say he is a leader. He's a guy that wants to win and get that team chemistry back going like they had it when they went on that Eastern Conference Finals run. He'll acquiesce to what's going on because guess what? The man got the money that gave you, that paid you, and once the team decided to say, hey, we're not gonna give you a max deal, but we're gonna compensate you for gradually getting better each and every year that you've been an Atlanta Hawk. We're gonna reward you for that, but we're just not gonna give you that max bread. I think that John Collins has come to the reality that, hey, this is kind of where I am as a player, and I need to kind of fit in and understand what my role is for this team in order for them to win. Because he cannot be a lead guy or a two guy in order for them to and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's just not going to happen.
All right, coming up next, one of them is playing like a superstar and one isn't. We'll do that next right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta ATL Hangout on this first edition here on this Friday. Stay with us. Welcome back to Locked On Sports Atlanta. It's ATL Hangout Day here on this Friday, our first edition of this. Hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm Mark Zeno of A to Z, alongside ATL Day One's Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste, and Hitting Hard with John Chuckery. All of us here for the first time. We'll do these every so often here. We get all the shows on Locked On Sports Atlanta together for a little ATL Hangout. We hope you guys are enjoying it and appreciate you guys being part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. Over 2,000 subscribers on YouTube now. We are growing fast. And a huge thanks to all of you fans out there who are making Locked On Sports Atlanta part of your everyday listen here for some of the best content when it comes to Atlanta sports. This segment brought to you by our friends at BlueNile.com. And this segment is all about the Atlanta Braves because somebody's playing like a superstar and somebody ain't. Michael Harris continues to be on fire. A huge home run last night. A great throw from center field to nail a runner at the plate. And it was an impressive showing for a young man who's got about a month and a half more major league experience than all of us do for that standpoint. On the flip side, Ronald Acuna, who came back off the IL, started out hot. He's been bitterly cold ever since. These are not Ronald Acuna type numbers, but we'll get to Acuna in a moment, folks. Let's start first with Michael Harris. Jarvis, I mean, it's hard to understate what he's meant to this team so far this year. He came up right at the right time, right before that 14-game winning streak. But is this kid as special as he looks through the first month and a half?
Oh, man. Hey, hell yeah. Let me go ahead and say that. Let me go ahead and answer it like that. But, yeah, when you think about what he did last night, it was just – I think it was just something that you have to really take a look at and think how the Braves are going to structure how they move forward and try to get this NL East division, right? Because I know you talked about on your show about how good pitching beats good hitting each and every day, every time, right? And I think that I'll add to that for the Braves. Good pitching and defense. Yeah, I think it's going to be the caveat to carry the Braves into this and try to catch the New York Mets, because when you look at the post game last night as far as Kyle Wright, and they were talking to him about what it was, that kind of got into him, and he was talking about how that throw was what motivated him. He's like, yeah, the home runs are cool, that's all good, but what motivated him was that throw, because he saved the run. And then if you look right after that throw, I think Kyle Wright retired the next 7 batters. And he was just moving at a pace where he was just kind of working quickly. I was like, oh, my God, this dude is going at an amazing pace. They even talked about it on the broadcast on Valley Sports. And it was just for a guy to have an effect like that on the game. Like, we know how guys at the plate, the home runs and all that good stuff, but the guy to be able to affect the game defensively and at the plate, man, Michael Harris is all what we have expected and even more.
John?
It's crazy to think about what little experience both Strider and Harris have in professional baseball. Strider was just drafted a couple years ago. He's a 2020 draft pick. He had 94 innings in minor league ball last year. Harris didn't even play AAA. The thing you love about Michael Harris, he plays like he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And he just goes out there, he steals bases, he makes every throw, he runs down every ball in the gap, he hits for power, he does everything you could ask him to do. Just goes out there and plays every night. And what's the old saying? Defense and speed travels. That's what he gives you every night. All of his hitting is a bonus. I mean, the idea that he's doing this at the plate is unbelievable. You knew he was going to be an elite defensive center fielder. You knew he could go out and steal bases. The hitting and the power and everything is just a bonus out of all of it. But to have 2 guys on a World Series championship team from the year before that have come in and made this kind of impact as rookies is crazy. Like, that doesn't usually happen when you run everybody back by and large.
And it's interesting because there's a question, John, that you posed, and I'll just save it because Mark may be going to that next. But that was my thought as well. Like, if you talk about 2 impactful players, that's my thought. It's Michael Harris II, and it's Spencer Strider. And I thought about this because you guys kind of went in the direction that I was going to talk about with what Kyle Wright said, as well as, what you just said, Chuck Reed. For me, it's looking at Michael Harris. First of all, thanks, Snit, for putting him back in the 9th position, right? The 9-hole works. The 8-hole you lost when you put him there. So keep him in the 9, we'll keep it moving. But to me, you also look at the fact that if you go back to May 28th or before May 28th, we know what this team was, right? On May 28th, you call Michael Harris up from AA. On May 30th, you transition Spencer Strider into the starting rotation. On June 30th, you're 21-6. To me, that's all you need to know about the impact of both of these players on this squad.
No, it's been incredible to watch them both. And with Michael Harris' continued success, you look at the big picture and going out and trying to win another World Series. Now, you did it last year without the services of Ronald Acuna, but you also had Freddie Freeman in the lineup. I don't know how much longer this team can continue to play at the clip that they are. And it's almost thankful that the All-Star break is coming, right? Because maybe just Acuna needs, even though he's playing in the game, maybe he just needs a couple of stress-free days where he doesn't have to do anything and think about important baseball. But I don't know, guys. At what point do you start to get concerned? If you're Brian Snitker, at what point do you have to evaluate, can I continue to leave a guy who's slumping this badly at the top of my lineup? I know it's Ronald Acuna, and the idea of moving him out of that lineup, that top of that lineup, teacher, is sacrilegious. But at some point in time, Snitker's going to have to make a decision if Acuna can't turn things around.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And the thing I like about Brian Snitker, I know sometimes we kind of bash him for this, like, because he makes us scratch our head in terms of him kind of moving parts around. But when he's good at it, he's very, very good. So if he wants to take an opportunity to evaluate him, I wouldn't say right now, Mark, I think you also, like you said, you wait until after the All-Star break. Maybe you give him a couple games and kind of see how he comes back from there. And then at that point, you make the determination of what it is that you're going to do with him. If, to your point, he hasn't maybe rested. And you know what I'm thinking as well, Mark, that it may be something to where it's not just resting the body, but the mind. Because I believe a lot of it could be as well that mental on whether or not, my body is truly at 100% and I'm ready to rock and roll. And then, of course, what you get from him in, right field. So you want to be mindful of what you're still, for the most part, we know he had a little flub a couple games ago, but for the most part, I think he's doing fine defensively. But yes, Snit's going to have to potentially make a decision if he comes back on the other side of All-Star and on the other side of that Derby, and we're still seeing the lack of productivity at the plate that we've seen so far.
All right, more decisions to come. First, a word, our friends from BlueNile.com. At Blue Nile, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating that custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. If you're ready to pop that question, if you're deciding of making that leap, Blue Nile has sample online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring for her. Each ring is one of a kind. But if you're on the other end of the spectrum, where you're just looking for that special piece of jewelry, that fine jewelry, a way to say I love you, a way to say thank you, you can have everything at your disposal at Blue Nile, because they have jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift for every single budget out there. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. The podcast exclusive engagement, includes engagement rings. It's an exclusive here on the podcast. Use the code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, so Jarvis, I'll ask you, does Alex Anthopoulos need to be as aggressive at this trade deadline as he was last year?
You know what? I don't think so, because there are only a few tweaks they probably could make. Like you mentioned before, you talked about, starting pitcher, or maybe somebody there in the bullpen, but they got Yates coming. They seem to be pretty excited about, satisfied with what they seeing in him is from a rehab situation. So I think that he doesn't necessarily have to be as aggressive as he was, but, I'm sure that, Alex Anthopoulos is always looking for the right deal. That's why I believe he's one of the best general managers in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, he already found Cano, and that seems to have paid off early, Teacher. Your thoughts?
And I was thinking the same thing. When you look at what Robinson Cano has done just to at least stabilize things until he gets Ozzie Albies back, maybe in that August timeframe, I don't think he has to be as aggressive. But I do agree with you. When I was thinking about Charlie Morton's last start, and now he's 5-4, and he was looking like old Charlie for a couple of games there, and then he just kind of came back down to earth. I'm like, yeah, that's probably where you need to be, because the rotation is just not set, right? So we really don't have 5 people in the Braves rotation that are reliable, because Ian Anderson, he had we'll call it a solid outing the last go round, but ultimately speaking, it wasn't a great outing against the Nats, just last Sunday. And so you look at that, coupled with the fact that maybe kind of coming out of All-Star week and getting to a later trade deadline, which I think is around August 2nd, they've got, I don't want to call it a soft schedule, Mark, but soft enough. And back to your point about Ronald Acuna Jr. as well, that may give him an opportunity to catch himself up, just because they'll play teams like, the Phillies, the D-backs, and the Phillies again before they even see the Mets. I think that'll give Anthopoulos an opportunity to really see where this team is, to see if he needs to either just go after another pitcher to potentially shore up that starting rotation, or if he sees that there are still some holes that need to be filled on the team, on the roster.
Pop quiz real quick for the both of you. Jarvis, you go first. If I asked you, the playoffs started tomorrow, who's starting games 1, 2, and 3 in any order for you on this Brave staff, who would you pick?
I'm going Max Fried, Kyle Wright, and this may sound crazy. I'm going.
No, it's Spencer Strider. That's the answer.
No question. That's the answer. Yeah, that's not crazy.
I gotta go with the young pup, man.
What about Ian Anderson, who's great in the playoffs? He stinks right now.
Exactly.
Starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
I am starting Max Fried in game 1, Spencer Strider in game 2, and Kyle Wright in game 3.
Yeah,
That's
and I'm
just
good with that
not-
order too. I'm absolutely good with that order. And sometimes it's a chess, it's a chess game, right, Mark? Just depending on what team they play as well, and who they need, who they need on the mound or on the hill to be able to really have an effective outing. So yeah, in whatever order 2 and 3 go, and that's fine as long as we keep Max Fried in the first spot. We're all good. Keep the
mustaches only, beards need not apply. All right, coming up next. The Atlanta Falcons have a monumental task in front of them, not only for the team, but on the defensive side of the ball. But they may have something in their back pocket that will make things different this year. That's next right here on ATL Hangout on Sports. What are we doing again here? On Locked On Sports
I know, right?
ATL Hangout on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Locked On Sports Atlanta. It's our ATL Hangout here on this Friday on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On ATL. I'm at Mark Zinno. He's at Jarvis Davis 90. J Davis 90.
Jarvis D90, Mr.
Jarvis
Zinno.
D90. I'm so close. I just know your pictures, so I follow you. Same. And Tanitra, where are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I make it easier for everybody at Tanitra Batiste.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's what I
was trying to say, T.
I know. You make life difficult. That's what happens when you're the boss. You have to make life difficult. All right. Speaking of difficult,
We're going to go there. Okay.
This segment brought to you by our friends at Coffee AM. But speaking of difficult, Falcons have a difficult task in front of them this year. Look, and I don't know that the expectations have to be grand for this team. I do think they may surprise some people. I'm hoping they're more competitive than people think, but particularly on the defensive side of the ball, because Arthur Smith, I think we understand his offensive prowess and where he is. But on the defensive side of the ball, last year there was a lot of square peg, round hole scenarios for Dean Pease, particularly with a guy like Deion Jones and several other players. But we heard them say this offseason that Dean Pease finally has the pieces that he is comfortable with. Now, that doesn't mean that these are high-level, high-talented pieces, but they are the pieces that he feels fits better with his scheme this year than he has last year. So, Jarvis, the question is, what does that translate to, and what are the results that we can expect to see?
I think that I'm going to go on the record and say that they will be better, but I think it's just a matter of – but like I said, it's nowhere from up, right?
They were last year.
18 sacks, 18 sacks last
go.
year. Yeah, it's only up from there. You know what I mean? When it comes to, it's that gradual progress, and Dean Pease talking about him running 100% of his defense versus 60%, and a lot of people acting like it is breaking news, but he talked about this throughout the season. He just didn't want to throw his guys all the way under the bus.
Yes.
And, he knew that he didn't have as much as he needed to work with to be able to put out a formidable defense on Sundays at 1:00. But I think that just from where they are is from a free agency standpoint, they brought in Lorenzo Carter. I like that. I thought that was a solid pickup, and I think that the drafting of Arnold Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone, who I think is going to be a sneaky good guy for the Falcons on 3rd and long this year. I just think from those additions alone, I think that you're looking at a defense that you're going to be able to call a little bit more plays. And even let's talk about the secondary as well, because you got Jalen Hawkins and Richie Grant vying for those starting spots. Of course, you got some veterans in there. Harris, they're sitting there chilling, waiting to pounce in. But I think that the most important move that I think that is one of the reasons why they will be better is because of Casey Hayward. Because we already know, I'm not going to mention dude's name from last year because it was just absolutely terrible what was going on that backside of the defense opposite A.J. Terrell last year. So I think the addition of Casey Hayward is going to help Pease be a little bit more aggressive in his play calling, because we know he likes to send from all levels when we didn't see that much, because once you send it from all levels and you're not getting to the quarterback and you can't play on that backside of the defense, you're in for long games, and that's exactly what we saw last year.
Tanitra?
Well, Jarvis kind of called all of the defense out and what they needed to do. So I don't think there's a place for me to kind of give any more
My bad.
information. I think the only thing I have left, because he's called out the secondary, he's called out the pass rush, is
All these
maybe
shots coming at me. What is going on today, T?
called out the whole like defense. I'm like, every scheme, I don't think there's anything left for me. But I will say this. In addition to what Jarvis said, I feel like Grady's going to have at least a little bit more help up front. So maybe what you'll get is a little bit better run defense. So I'll give them something, to that regard. But I will go back into the secondary as well and say that in addition to what I do believe, to your point, will be a shored up secondary in AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward, I also am interested in seeing not just what Dean Marlowe is going to be able to do for that safety core, but we talked about Isaiah Oliver coming back, and he really was starting to look good in that nickel package until he had that injury, and he's hungry. I spoke with him at open practice a couple weeks ago. He is hungry, and Dean Pease really feels like he's ready to go to that next level. But also, guys, there are people like Richie Grant. Let's just be real. Dean Pease tried not to call anybody out, but he kind of called him out a little bit, especially in the beginning of the season. And Richie got progressively better, but he's got a little chip on his shoulder. He's got something that he needs to prove. And then one more guy that we have been high on from day one, and he's just improved incrementally, is Jalen Hawkins. So wherever they try to fit him into his play for the secondary, I think that he'll be fine. Oh, and one more guy that I think, Mark, you would agree with us, has been like the question, all we can do is put a question mark on him, is Marlon Davidson. Can he stay healthy to show us finally what he's made of? If he can, I do believe that's going to give the Falcons just a little bit more upfront to work with.
There's only one thing I'll say on Richie Grant. He is sort of the litmus test at this point in time for the quality of drafting and scouting of Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, right? Like, first round picks are easy to see whether they're good or bad. It's your second, third, fourth round picks, guys that you assume and you want to be starters in this league. For years, the second round draft pick of the Falcons was always a stinker, whether it was Jalen, who's the kid from LSU?
Jalen Collins.
Jalen Collins, that's right. I was going to say Carter, but I know that wasn't it. You look at Marlon Davidson, all the second round picks that were bad
Isaiah
guys.
Oliver.
Yeah, Isaiah. Well, hold on a second. See, now I think Oliver has a place here as a slot corner.
He's found the place, though.
He's found a place. Now, you can get slot corners in the fifth round. So that is he living up to second round billing? No, but if he's a viable starter on this team going forward, then you take it for what it's worth. That all said, I think Richie Grant is going to be a big litmus test. But I also think the one thing that I've focused on is, what do you hear defensive coordinators talk about so much? Limiting explosive plays, limiting big plays. Well, he's the guy that's got to keep the top on the defense, right? And if they can do that this year, if they can eliminate a bigger portion of the big plays that they gave up, I think they'll be a lot more competitive in games and a lot closer in games. All right, before we move on from the Falcons here, just a quick word from our good friends at Coffee AM. I don't know about you guys. I got that box in the mail, and when I opened the coffee hit me in
lit up the whole house.
Amazing. Coffee AM is an Atlanta-based small batch coffee roaster that brings coffee from around the world. I've had the coffee from Kenya. I tried Sumatra. All from all over the world. Organic, fair trade, direct trade, expertly crafted blends, espressos and flavored coffees, gourmet teas, and a whole lot more. You're going to love everything about Coffee AM. Why? Because it's so fresh. Most of the coffees are roasted and shipped the same day or close to it, and they're locally roasted right here in our backyard in Georgia. Check them out online at coffeeam.com, but you go to coffeeam.com/lockedon today and take a look at their full menu of coffees, teas, and gift sets. That's coffeeam.com/lockedon. Use the coupon code Locked On at checkout to get 15% off your first order of coffees, teas, and gift sets. Coffee AM, the best small batch coffee roaster in America, and right here in our backyard. Okay, offensively for the Falcons. I have said this on A to Z. You guys may have heard it. Of course, everyone's a fan. I say that in jest.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody's a fan. I promise. I'll tell you what. That said, the only thing I'm not giving a pass to this year offensively is the number of targets thrown Kyle Pitts' way. Because in reality, you drafted him 2 years ago to much consternation of what was at need for the team and drafted a pass catcher. Granted, he may be a freak and an anomaly and a genetic, unicorn, if you will, given what he can do out on the football field. But all that, you threw him 110 balls last year with a quarterback and a team that wasn't going to be very good. You can't double down and draft another pass catcher a year in a row and then not throw them the ball.
Right.
So that's the only thing. And I believe Arthur Smith will, but for me, that's the only offensively, like the only measuring stick I have at this point in time is feed Kyle Pitts until you can't feed him no more.
Well, I'm glad that's the only one you have, because for me, I'm still looking at left shark, and I need left shark to do better. So whether that's left shark Caleb McGarry, or whether that is somehow there's a, Justin Schaefer shows us something, coming in, like you said, maybe as a late pick, a 6th rounder, but he could be a possibility there. And for me, that's kind of where it kind of starts and stops, because I don't know. I just feel like with Caleb McGarry, like it's do or die, right? And really, it's that entire O line that
mostly die. It's mostly die. Let's be real. Yeah, it's mostly die.
Grim Reaper, Jarvis.
Right. Well, and like, Mark, that's my running joke. Like, I know Caleb's on the right side, but remember Left Shark from the Super Bowl that was doing his own thing. So that's why I was calling him Left Shark. But I know he's on the right side. But for me, it's like with Caleb McGarry, he's got to show and prove. I think that's where it kind of starts and stops. And I guess too, unless you go out and miraculously get a JC Treader, I think at some point, Jalen Mayfield, Matt Hennessy, one of you, please step up and show us that you are a starting center in this league.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jarvis.
Yeah. So, I guess I got to mention his name since they're in the quote unquote position battle. Drew Dahlman, that's Terry Fontenot's guy, right? Because it was funny, like when we started talking about what we're going to talk about, get into it for the show. I just start going back and looking at some of the draft picks, the Falcons draft, right? It was like, man, Thomas Dimitroff didn't help Dan Quinn out defensively. Man, he didn't help him out on the offensive line. Like,
right.
Wow, they just stunk. And I think that, I think Drew Dahlman has to, dog. We're talking about validating picks, right? You talk about Richie Grant defensively. Mm-hmm. I think Matt Hennessy has to, Drew Dahlman has to win this battle in order for Terry Fontenot's pick to be validated. Because if it's not, like, because Matt Hennessy is not that good. Like, I don't want to bury him too. I want to bury him too quickly. But you know what I'm saying? I don't want to bury him too quickly. But I think Drew Dahlman has to win this battle, and we know that that's just how the NFL works, right? If you can't block nobody, you're gonna be giving up 40+ sacks like you've done in the past few years on this Falcons offensive line. And this is the same line from last year. Yeah. So well, we got to start there first. Before we start talking about Kyle Pitts and targets and stuff and Drake London. Mm-hmm. Can you block? Yeah. Can you average 4.2 yards a carry? Those are my questions coming into the season.
It's going to be.
Or can you get into a 3rd and short situation and the ball doesn't have to be thrown? Like, can you help to move the chains from that? And check that, guys. Yes. That was Drew Dahlman. I know I said Jalen Mayfield, but when I was talking about Matt Hennessy, I meant Hennessy and Dahlman. So just check that.
And by the way, this may be the first time in about 14 years where on 3rd and short, throwing the ball is more of a liability than running it. But that may be a different conversation for a different ATL hangout on another Friday. So that does it for us today here on this Friday. Appreciate you guys joining us. It's been a lot of fun. This won't be our last ATL hangout here for all the shows on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We hope that John Chuckery can return from his abyss with Kurt Yates. Truthfulness, John had some computer problems, and so the miracles of technology have failed us here. But he's part of our ATL hangout, and we appreciate you guys supporting Locked On Sports Atlanta. Again, continue to subscribe to YouTube, share all the content you see online, tell a friend about all the shows here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Don't forget about our Braves postcast and Locked On Falcons and Locked On Hawks, all right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On ATL. So for Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste and John Chuckery, wherever he has gone. We hope you come back soon. This has been our first edition of ATL Hangout right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. You guys have a great weekend.